Stories like this remind us that hope never dies. Subscribe for more inspiring content and leave a like to support the channel. The rhythmic squeak of Leo's worn-out work boots was a familiar soundtrack in the cavernous, empty halls of Northwood High. For 30 years, he had been the quiet custodian of this space, a silent witness to generations of teenage triumphs and heartbreaks. He moved with an unhurried grace, his cart of cleaning supplies gliding obediently beside him. Leo was a man etched by time and routine, his face a roadmap of gentle smiles and worried furrows, his hands calloused, but careful. He was 58 years old, with thinning gray hair and the kind of tired, kind eyes that seemed to hold a deep, unspoken reservoir of patience. To the students and faculty, he was just Leo, the janitor, a fixture as reliable and unnoticed as the brick walls themselves. But inside this unassuming man, a grand and stubborn dream was being meticulously polished day after day. His life with his wife, Grace, was a tapestry woven from simple threads. A small, tidy home with a garden she tended with loving care, quiet evenings spent reading or watching old movies, and a shared history that needed few words. Grace was the anchor to his soaring kite of a dream. She was a librarian at the town's small public library, a woman whose calm demeanor and sharp wit were the perfect counterpoint to Leo's quiet idealism. She understood him in a way no one else did. She never laughed at his dream, not really. She would just smile, a little sadly sometimes, and pat his hand. "Someone's got to win, I suppose," she'd say, her voice a soft melody of pragmatism and affection. "Just make sure you've set aside enough for the electricity bill, my dreamer." The dream was the Majestic Theater. It stood on Main Street like a forgotten monarch, its grand marquee dark and rusting, letters missing like lost teeth. The vibrant posters that once promised adventure and romance had long faded, leaving behind ghostly white squares on the peeling paint. To most residents of their small town of Havenwood, the Majestic was a relic, an eyesore slated for demolition. A soulless development company had already put in an offer, planning to replace the theater with a block of sterile, beige luxury condos that would forever alter the town's humble skyline. But to Leo and Grace, the Majestic was sacred ground. It was the place where a nervous 19-year-old Leo, with sweaty palms and a borrowed tie, had taken Grace on their first date to see It's a Wonderful Life. It was in the plush velvet darkness of Row G, seats 12 and 13, that he had first dared to take her hand. It was under the soft glow of the lobby chandeliers that he had first told her he loved her. The theater wasn't just a building. It was the cornerstone of their story, the silent keeper of their most cherished memories. It was the heart of a Havenwood that was rapidly disappearing. And so, every Friday, for the past 15 years, Leo performed a ritual. After cashing his modest paycheck, he would walk to the corner convenience store, the little bell above the door announcing his arrival. He would nod to Stan, the perpetually bored owner, and ask for a Powerball ticket. Not a quick pick, never. Leo had his numbers, 1926 for the year the Majestic first opened its doors, and 1213 for Row G, seats 12 and 13. It was this ritual that earned him the town's gentle and sometimes not so gentle mockery. "Chasing that pot of gold again, Leo?" Stan would ask, a smirk playing on his lips as he printed the familiar slip of paper. The usual Friday afternoon crowd at the store, local construction workers grabbing a drink after a long week, neighbors picking up milk, would often chime in. "If he wins, he's promised to buy us all around, right, Leo?" laughed Bill, a burly plumber whose sarcasm was a second language. "He's not buying you a drink, Bill," another would retort. "He's going to buy that pile of bricks on Main Street, going to be the king of the Majestic." The laughter that followed wasn't malicious, not mostly. It was the kind of casual ridicule reserved for a town's harmless eccentric. They saw a man spending $2 a week on a fantasy, a janitor dreaming of a millionaire's gesture. They didn't see the fierce, protective love behind it. They didn't understand that for Leo, that ticket wasn't just a gamble, it was an act of defiance. It was a weekly vote against the death of memory, a prayer on a slip of paper. Leo would always just offer a small, shy smile, tuck the ticket into the worn folds of his leather wallet, and say, "You'll see, someday." The laughter would follow him out the door. "We'll see you next week, Leo." This particular Friday felt different. A sense of urgency hummed in the autumn air. The town council had scheduled the final vote on the zoning permit for the condo development for the following month. The for sale sign in front of the Majestic had been replaced by a newer, slicker one from the developers, advertising modern living in the heart of Havenwood. It felt like a countdown clock had started. That evening, Leo was unusually quiet at the dinner table. Grace watched him push his mashed potatoes around his plate. "What is it, honey?" she asked softly. Leo sighed, laying his fork down. "They put up a new sign. At the theater. It looks so final." He looked up at her, his kind eyes clouded with a rare despair. "All those years I've been telling myself I had time, that one day my numbers would come up and I'd walk in there with a briefcase full of cash and save it. Now," he trailed off, the weight of reality pressing down on him. Grace reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her touch was warm and firm. "You have a beautiful heart, Leo Miller. You've always had it. You want to save that place because you believe in it, because you believe in us. That's more than most people can say they believe in. But believing isn't enough, Gracie," he whispered. "It won't stop a bulldozer." "Maybe not," she conceded. "But don't you dare let them take the dream too. That's ours. The memories are ours. No developer can tear those down." Her words were a balm, as they always were. He held her hand, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in him, if not in the astronomical odds of the lottery. He knew she thought his plan was fanciful, a sweet but impossible notion. But she never made him feel foolish for having it. She protected his dream as fiercely as he protected the theater itself. He got up and put on his jacket. "I'm going to go buy the ticket," he said, his voice a little stronger now. She smiled. "I know. Get some milk while you're there?" The walk to the convenience store was filled with a poignant mix of nostalgia and anxiety. He passed the Majestic, pausing on the sidewalk across the street. He looked at the grand arched windows, now boarded up, and imagined them once again filled with light. He could almost hear the faint echo of an orchestra, the buzz of a waiting audience. He saw himself and Grace as teenagers, laughing on the steps. The building wasn't just brick and mortar. It was a living archive of his own heart. A lump formed in his throat. This wasn't just about saving a building. It was about proving that some things were worth more than their real estate value. It was about proving that a life of quiet service and steadfast love had meaning. When he entered the store, the bell's jingle sounded almost melancholic. The usual crowd was there. "Look what the cat dragged in," Bill the plumber announced. "Time for the weekly donation to the Millionaires Fund, Leo." Leo ignored him, walking straight to the counter. Stan was leaning on it, reading a magazine. He didn't even look up. "The usual, Leo?" "Yes, please, Stan," Leo said, his voice quiet but firm. "One Powerball." He laid 2 crisp dollar bills on the counter. As Stan's fingers tapped at the lottery machine, the familiar whirring and printing sound filled the small store. Bill and his friends snickered behind him. "Hey, Leo," Bill called out. "I heard the jackpot is over 300 million tonight. You gonna buy the whole town when you win?" "Just the theater, Bill," Leo said without turning around. "That's all I need." Stan tore the ticket from the machine and slid it across the counter. "Here you go. Good luck." There was a flicker of something in Stan's eyes. Not pity, maybe just a shade of weariness for the old routine. Leo picked up the ticket. The numbers were there, in their familiar sequence. 1, 9, 26, 12, 13. His history, his hope, printed in neat black ink. He carefully folded it and placed it in its designated spot in his wallet, right beside the faded photograph of a young Grace, her smile as bright as the Majestic's long extinguished lights. As he turned to leave, Bill clapped him hard on the shoulder. "Don't spend it all in one place, buddy." The men erupted in laughter. This time, however, it felt different. The laughter felt sharper, colder, edged with the finality of the developer's sign. They weren't just laughing at a silly dream anymore. They were laughing at a dream on its deathbed. Leo walked out into the cool night air, the sound of their mockery still ringing in his ears. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel defeated. He felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. He looked back at the convenience store, its fluorescent lights and ugly buzz against the twilight. Then he looked down the street towards the dark, silent silhouette of the Majestic Theater. He had the ticket. He had done his part. The rest was up to fate. He clutched the wallet in his pocket and started the walk home to Grace, his boots making their steady, rhythmic squeak on the pavement, a quiet beat of hope against the encroaching silence. The drawing was at 11 p.m. Leo and Grace didn't stay up to watch it. For them, the ritual was about the purchase, the act of hoping, not the frantic anxiety of the result. The ticket, tucked safely in Leo's wallet on the nightstand, was a symbol of possibility, and they preferred to let that possibility breathe overnight. They slept as they always did, with the quiet comfort of a life built on routine and mutual affection, oblivious to the cosmic shift that was taking place as 6 numbered balls tumbled in a clear plastic drum hundreds of miles away. The next morning was a crisp Saturday. Sunlight streamed through their bedroom window, illuminating dancing dust motes. Leo was the first to wake. He put on his glasses and looked at the wallet. For a moment, he considered not checking. He could let the dream live for another day, another week. But the image of the developer's sign, stark and clinical, flashed in his mind. He couldn't afford to wait. He padded softly into the living room in his slippers, grabbing the local newspaper from the front porch on his way. Grace was already in the kitchen, the comforting aroma of coffee filling the small house. She smiled at him as he entered. "Morning, my dreamer. Any big plans to spend your millions today?" Her tone was gentle, teasing, the same loving joke she'd made 100 times before. "Not yet," Leo said, his own smile feeling a little tight. He sat down at their small wooden kitchen table and unfolded the paper, his heart starting a low, heavy drumbeat against his ribs. He turned past the local news, past the sports section, until he found the small, dense block of text with the lottery results. He pulled his wallet from his robe pocket and carefully unfolded the ticket. He held it next to the newspaper, his hand trembling just slightly. He read the numbers in the paper first. 1, 9, 26, 12, 13. A wave of dizziness washed over him. It couldn't be. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, sure that his desire was playing tricks on him, rearranging the numbers into the pattern he so desperately wanted to see. He looked again, tracing the printed numbers on the ticket with his finger, then the ones in the paper. 1, 9, 26, 12, 13. They were a perfect match. He had forgotten to even check the Powerball number. He scanned the line again. Powerball, 7. His ticket's Powerball, 19. It didn't matter. He had matched the first 5 numbers. That wasn't the grand prize, the $300 million, but it was the second prize, $1 million. Leo's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't speak. He just stared, the ticket in one hand, the newspaper in the other. The world seemed to slow down, the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle bubbling of the coffee pot fading into a distant roar. $1 million. It was an impossible sum, a figure from another universe. It was enough. "Leo?" Grace's voice cut through the fog. She was standing beside him now, a mug of coffee in her hand, her expression shifting from amusement to concern. "What is it? Are you all right? You've gone completely pale." He couldn't form words. He simply lifted his trembling hand and pointed at the ticket and the paper. Grace set her mug down and leaned over his shoulder. Her eyes scanned the numbers, once, then twice. She straightened up slowly, her hand coming to her mouth. She looked from the paper to Leo, her calm, steady eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh, Leo," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Oh, my word." They didn't shout. They didn't jump for joy. They sat there in the quiet morning light of their little kitchen, hands clasped tightly across the table, and let the monumental, earth-shattering reality of it wash over them. Tears welled in Leo's eyes and streamed silently down his cheeks. They weren't tears of ecstatic joy, but of a profound, bone-deep relief. The weight of a 15-year-old dream, a burden he had carried with quiet dignity, had finally been lifted. Grace's own eyes were shining as she squeezed his hand, her anchor now holding him steady in a tidal wave of fortune. After taxes, the amount would be less, they knew that. But it would be more than enough. It was theater-saving money. Their first call was to the Lottery Commission, a surreal conversation confirming their win and outlining the next steps. Their second was to a financial advisor recommended by the commission. Everything felt detached, as if they were watching a movie about someone else. The real world, Havenwood, didn't feel part of this new reality yet. That changed when Leo put on his jacket. "Where are you going?" Grace asked, her voice still shaky. I need to go to the store," he said. It wasn't a desire for confrontation, but a need for confirmation, to make the impossible feel real in the place where it had always been a joke. When Leo walked into Stan's convenience store, the little bell seemed to ring with a new, triumphant clarity. It was midday, and Bill the plumber was there again, grabbing a soda. He saw Leo and his face broke into a wide, mocking grin. "Back so soon, Leo?" Bill bellowed. "Couldn't wait until next Friday to make your donation? Or did you come to tell us you won the big one?" He nudged the man next to him, laughing. Leo walked to the counter, his step steady. He felt a strange calm. He wasn't there to gloat. He was there to close a chapter. He looked at Stan, who was wiping down the counter with a dish rag. "Morning, Stan," Leo said, his voice even. "Leo?" Stan nodded, his expression flat. "Don't tell me you lost the ticket." "No," Leo said. He reached into his pocket, but instead of his wallet he pulled out the newspaper folded to the lottery page and laid it on the counter. "I just came to see if you could double-check these for me. I think I might have won something." Stan sighed, the picture of practiced indifference. He picked up the paper. Bill wandered closer, intrigued by this new development in the weekly routine. Stan's eyes scanned the numbers. His hand, wiping the counter, slowly stopped. He looked up at Leo, his mouth slightly agape. He looked back at the paper, then back at Leo. The bored smirk was gone, replaced by a look of utter stupefaction. "5 numbers?" Stan breathed, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Leo, you got 5 numbers." Bill craned his neck to see, his laughter dying in his throat. He read the numbers, his jaw going slack. The other 2 customers in the store fell silent, turning to stare. The air crackled with stunned silence. This wasn't supposed to happen. The town's harmless dreamer wasn't supposed to actually win. "Holy," Bill muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "Leo, I'll be damned." Leo simply nodded. He looked at the men whose casual laughter had followed him for years. He saw no triumph in their shocked faces, only a shared sense of wonder, as if they had all just witnessed a minor miracle. He wasn't their punchline anymore. He was the man who said he'd win someday, and then did. "I told you," Leo said softly, a small, genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. "Someday." He folded his newspaper and walked out, leaving a store full of silent men behind him. The bell above the door jingled his exit, a final, definitive note. The days that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork and planning. Leo and Grace remained steadfastly themselves. They didn't buy a new car or look at bigger houses. Their one and only focus was the majestic. Through their advisor, they reached out to the development company. At first, the executives were dismissive, assuming it was a local community group with a petition. That changed when the offer was made, an all-cash offer, significantly above the land value. The meeting took place in a sterile, glass-walled conference room in a city skyscraper. Leo wore his best suit, the one from his daughter's wedding, and Grace wore a simple, elegant dress. They were seated across a long, polished table from 3 men in perfectly tailored suits who oozed corporate confidence. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," the head developer said, his smile slick. "This is a very generous, if unusual, offer. May I ask what your intentions are for the property? We have extensive plans for a multi-unit residential complex that would bring significant tax revenue to Havenwood." Leo took a deep breath. He looked at Grace, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. "With all due respect, sir," Leo began, his voice clear and steady, "Havenwood doesn't need more luxury condos. It needs its heart back." He then told them the story. He spoke of his first date with Grace. He described the magic of seeing a classic film on the big screen, the feeling of community, the shared laughter and tears in the velvet darkness. He wasn't a businessman making a pitch. He was a husband, a father, a citizen, defending a memory. He explained that the numbers on his lottery ticket were the theater's birth year, and the seat numbers where his life with Grace truly began. The developers exchanged glances. They were used to dealing with zoning laws, profit margins, and legal challenges. They were not used to this. They were not used to a quiet janitor with $1 million check and a story that couldn't be quantified on a spreadsheet. "We're not going to develop it," Leo finished, his voice resonating with a gentle, unshakable authority. "We're going to restore it. Every last detail. For the town. For everyone." There was no negotiation. There was nothing left to say. The sheer, heartfelt power of Leo's purpose had silenced them more effectively than any legal argument could have. The dream had won. A month later, Leo and Grace stood in the cavernous, dusty lobby of the Majestic Theater. This time, they weren't peering through a locked gate. Leo held the keys in his hand. Sunlight streamed through the dirty arched windows, illuminating the faded grandeur of the decaying lobby. Grace ran her hand over the peeling paint on a grand pillar. "It needs a lot of work," she said, her voice echoing in the vast space. "We've got time," Leo replied, his arm around her. The news spread through Havenwood like wildfire. The story of Leo the janitor, his crazy dream, and the winning ticket became local legend overnight. People who had once chuckled at him now stopped him on the street to shake his hand. Bill the plumber showed up at the theater one afternoon, hat in hand. "Leo," he said, looking genuinely humbled, "I heard you're going to need some work done on the pipes in this old place. I'd be honored to do it. For a fair price, of course." Leo just smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. "I'll hold you to that, Bill." The journey was just beginning. The restoration would be long and expensive, but they had the means. And more importantly, they had the purpose. Their victory wasn't just in the money. It was in the vindication of a quiet, persistent hope. It was in proving that some things, love, memory, community, were worth gambling on. That evening, Leo and Grace stood on the sidewalk across the street, just as Leo had done on so many lonely nights. But tonight, he wasn't alone. And the theater wasn't completely dark. A single bare work light now glowed from inside the lobby. A tiny but brilliant star in the hollow darkness. It was a promise. The majestic would live again. And the man they all laughed at, the quiet janitor with the impossible dream, was the one who brought back the light. The true victory isn't found in the sudden acquisition of wealth, but in the unwavering courage to hold on to a purpose greater than oneself, even in the face of ridicule. The story of Leo and Grace teaches us that luck can provide the means, but it is passion, love, and a commitment to community that transform a winning ticket into a lasting legacy. The money didn't change who they were. It merely amplified the goodness that was already in their hearts, proving that the most valuable jackpots are the ones that are shared. If this story inspired you, please show your support with a like and subscribe to the channel for more journeys of hope and transformation.